Let's start with Mr. Towne.
Art said I could stand, so bear with me. Good evening. My name is Brian Towne, and I am your LaSalle County State's Attorney. I am proud to have served you as a prosecutor in our community for 24 years. I was born and raised in this community. My father is a union steelworker, my mom a licensed practical nurse, both retired, but the two of them showed my sister and I what it meant to work hard and put a family together. I'm proud to say I have a family of my own. My wife, my beautiful bride, is here tonight supporting me, probably mad at me for bringing her up. My youngest son is here, got him to dress up for this evening. And my oldest son is doing battle on the basketball court for the LaSalle Blue Cavaliers. My stepdaughter isn't with us tonight, she's with family, but I think that political debate is not the thing that dreams are made of for 11-year-old girls. I want to tell you a little bit about my background. I have prosecuted successfully virtually every murder case in LaSalle County for the last 2 decades. I've successfully prosecuted international drug traffickers and local drug dealers. I've put rapists behind bars. I've put thieves, robbers, and people who damage our property behind bars. I have the experience, I've seen so much, and my goal is to continue to be your state's attorney for the next 4 years and beyond, because it is my goal to keep you safe, to worry about the things that you don't need to worry about, so that when your heads hit the pillow, you can rest comfortably and get up and go on with your lives, not worried about the criminal element that is alive and well in LaSalle County. Thank you.
Yes, let's go with Karen Donnelly.
Thank you, Mr. Stout. First off, I'd like to thank everybody for being here tonight. It shows you've taken an interest in the political system and that you care about what each of us have to say as candidates before you tonight. So I'm hopeful that we have a wonderful event tonight and that if there's any questions that remain unanswered, I will stay afterwards to answer those questions for you. As far as my background, my name is Karen Donnelly and I'm a resident of Towne, Illinois. I have lived my entire adult life in LaSalle County. I remain committed, focused, and I want to serve the people of LaSalle County. I began my passion with the law career back in 1982 when I started out as a legal secretary. Since that time, my passion has grown. I knew this is what I wanted to do. It wasn't enough for the attorneys to tell me to do something. I wanted to know why I was doing it. Well, life happened in that meantime, and I married my wonderful husband, Rich, of 26 years. And I've had 2 children, my son Cody, 23, and my beautiful daughter Cassie, who's here tonight. I went to Northern Illinois University College of Law, where I graduated cum laude and was a member of Law Review, and I'm also a published author with the Kane County Bar Review. The passion has never swayed. I remain committed to the law. I want to serve the people of LaSalle County and bring my knowledge to you. I have administrative experience, 30 plus years running offices. I can bring that knowledge to LaSalle County because, as you know, some of the positions that are involved and the duties involved of a state's attorney are administrative in nature. My legal career, I am in private practice in Ottawa with the attorney firm of Mueller, Anderson and Associates. I have handled 119 cases my first year alone. I had the good fortune to work under Mr. Towne for 2 years. And during that time, I saw changes that could be made, changes that should be made, and changes that must be made. And that's why I'm here tonight asking for your support and your vote. Thank you.
Good evening, and thank you for coming out. I'm Betty Roliardi, and I was born and raised in Oglesby. In fact, my family roots run very deep in LaSalle County, especially Oglesby, LaSalle, Peru. I lived the majority of my life, my adult life, in LaSalle County. I was office manager in the state's attorney's office back in the 1980s, and that's what sparked my interest in going to law school. I too graduated from NIU Law School. After law school, I did not have a law firm to come back to in LaSalle County, and my first job was in Freeport. That's what took me to Northwest Illinois. I ended up having a huge practice there because the man I worked for dropped dead of a heart attack 4 months after I started. So I had his practice as well as mine. And then I met this wonderful gentleman sitting at the table over there with the green eyes. He was chief of investigations for the Stevenson County Sheriff's Department. So we were against each other in court all the time. But then years later, when he was divorced and I was no longer engaged to somebody else, he asked me out to dinner. And 7 weeks later, we eloped. And that was 18 years ago. But I did marry a man with 3 children, so it was not my decision as to where those kids were raised. That's what kept me in Northwest Illinois and not in LaSalle County. However, I was home all the time because this is where my family was from. And I spent a great deal of time with my mother in her final days. I've always been back here, and it's always been in my heart. One of my goals was to run for state's attorney. And now that the kids are grown and my husband's career is flexible, it's my time. So I'm ready to do the job. I have 24 years of experience, a great deal of it in criminal prosecution and criminal defense, but also a wide variety of experience in other aspects of the law, including zoning. I'm ready to do the job, and I have some understanding what the magnitude of that job is, especially when this whole safe unit gets resolved. That's going to open up a huge area that is going to need someone like me to handle it. And thank you for your support. Thank you.
Thank you. The first question pertains to the LaSalle County Safe Team. The state's attorney felony enforcement team, or drug interdiction unit, operated by the state's attorney's office. The question is, should the prosecutor's office have the right to take investigators, which are allowable by statute, and put them on the road and give them police powers? And Mrs. Donnelly, you have the question first. You have 2 minutes.
Thank you, Tom. With regard to the safe unit, I'm the one candidate up here that represents somebody with regard to a charge from the safe unit. And with regard to the powers and duties of the state's attorney's office, there is a specific statute in place that enumerates the duties. Among those duties are he may appoint special investigators. However, within that statute, it's very specific what those powers and duties are. And nowhere in there does it state that a state's attorney can hire and supplement and supply his safe unit, a drug interdiction team, to patrol Route 80. Now, I was a statutory interpretation specialist, I guess, in law school. I worked under a professor who taught statutory interpretation. I was her research assistant, and I feel very strongly about this. I know the case, the 3rd District opinion was a well-written, well-versed opinion written by Justice Schmidt, and he himself is a former police officer. We had the local circuit clerk rule against this, and then the appellate court took it even further. Mr. Towne has filed a petition for leave to appeal, which was granted by the Supreme Court. I believe the Supreme Court's going to handily hand down a decision that says this is not something that can be done. Because once this happens, the precedent it will set will be extremely dangerous. Now, Mr. Towne has said that the safe unit, people have contacted him with regard to how he did it. However, I have heard but one county that has done this with regard to the safe unit. Everything's on hold right now. And I'm fearful of what's going to happen when the Supreme Court comes down and says this is not something he can do, what LaSalle County is subject to as far as liability. So I would disband the safe unit immediately. I would get rid of all the vehicles, everything that was paid for and purchased with forfeiture money that supplies the vehicles for the safe unit, the radar equipment, the guns, the ammunition. And I just feel everything that's happened with the safe unit has been a travesty for this county. In fact, $500,000 has been sent to Spring Valley, an agency outside of LaSalle County, with regard to the safe unit. I want to question, what was that money used for?
Thank you. Mrs. Roliardi, same question pertaining to safety.
Thank you, Tom. I agree with Ms. Donnelly as to how the state's attorney can have investigators, but it's never been interpreted that the state's attorney can go out and form their own police force. Mr. Towne has stretched those statutes to a point where it's breaking. That's It's never been done before. That doesn't mean that he thought that maybe he was doing something wrong. But I think the Supreme Court is going to uphold what the appellate court did and say, no, that's not what was intended by being able to have investigators. It's interesting, all the various information I've read from FOIA requests and things in the paper, and some other documents that were provided to me, but what's most appalling is that Mr. Towne took this money, all this money that was coming from the arrest from the safe unit, and put it into the Spring Valley City Bank. In Bureau County, the Spring Valley Police Department, he said at one time, in various cases, they were the arresting agency. They never were. The safe unit is the arresting agency. They get 65% of the forfeiture funds. The state's attorney's office gets another 12.5. So there's a great deal of money coming back in. The appellate prosecutors that Mr. Towne is connected with, most state's attorney's offices are, they get 12.5%. With all this money in Spring Valley, in Bureau County, and the Spring Valley Police Department, and many groups in Spring Valley being enriched by the contributions of this money, what is going on and what's going to happen when we have to pay this all back, when the Supreme Court says you were wrong? All the federal lawsuits that are going to be filed, how much in debt is LaSalle County going to be then when we have to return this money and these assets? It's frightening, and I'm the person that can handle it because it's going to be a mess. Thank you.
Mr. Towne.
Thank you, Mr. Collins. Well, I'm the bad guy. It would seem as though my opponents are disgusted with the fact that for the last 4 years, the safe unit has interdicted drugs off of Interstate 80. We've apprehended a member of Al-Qaeda. We've taken down a Russian mobster. And we have collected hundreds of thousands of dollars that we have taken out of the pockets of drug dealers, which is the only motive that they have to sell their drugs, and put it into our communities so that we can build better programs for drug awareness, better programs for drug prevention, to help addicts of heroin addiction, and to give equipment to law enforcement officials. One of my opponents said that the circuit clerk ruled against me. It was actually the chief judge of LaSalle County who ruled in favor of the safe unit. Judge Ryan ruled in a case that we had the absolute right to do what we're doing, and we did everything by the book correctly. The 3rd District ruled against us in Buell versus Ringland, but the Illinois Supreme Court is going to take that case. They've agreed to take that case. Now, they don't take very many cases, but when they do, presumably, is to correct something that the appellate court did wrong. Now, I'm not saying that the appellate court did anything wrong, but they didn't have nearly the record that Judge Ryan did when he ruled in our favor. So when the Supreme Court hears the case this year, I believe that they will rule that we followed the law, we did things correctly, and with regard to the money that goes to Spring Valley, we were never, I'm flattered to think that I created my own police force, but in fact, we've always partnered with the Spring Valley Police Department because they had, until he retired, an outstanding member of law enforcement who was the commander of that unit. He's here tonight. And also members of the LaSalle Police Department, members of the Ottawa Police Department. We work together to fight crime and take drugs off the street. Thank you.
As we all know, drug abuse, particularly heroin, is a plague across the United States and right here at home in LaSalle County. Do you favor a drug court or diversion court to give first-time and non-violent offenders a chance to get help and to keep their record clean? We'll start with Mr. Towne.
Okay. Well, I can tell you this. I can tell you that I am working with a group called Buddy's Purpose. I am working with a group called Dusty Roads. I'm working with a group called Sipasa that are out there trying to save lives. Currently, we have an epidemic of heroin, not only in our community, but across this country. 120 people a day die from heroin overdoses. Most of them are our youth. Now, programs like Drug Court are vital to keeping our children alive. And I have been on record as being in favor of Drug Court from the very beginning. Where I was slightly misrepresented is because what I said was, we cannot do drug court unless we have the proper funding to do it right. Drug court is a concept of taking those who have addiction, who aren't criminals, they have addiction, they're suffering from addiction, and putting them into a diversionary system that will help them curb that addiction. Until that happens, until we have the resources to be able to help these people correctly and monitor them, we're simply kicking them out of the courthouse and telling them to go fix themselves. And that's even more dangerous than prosecuting them. So until we have the money to do a properly funded drug court, a properly funded veterans court, a properly funded sobriety court, a properly funded, what's what I say here, I got veterans, drug, sobriety, all the specialty courts, we have to rely on our experience, we have to rely on our discretion, and we have to handle things in the courthouse to help these people. Thank you.
Karen?
Thank you, Mr. Stout. With regard to Mr. Towne's comments about getting involved with groups like Buddy's Purpose and Dusty Roads, well, I have a friend here tonight, Debbie Hallam, and she runs up the Dusty Roads Foundation. She just recently heard from Mr. Towne, who's making a $5,000 donation to that. Remember, folks, it's an election year. 2010, Mr. Towne said no to a drug court. Whether he was quoted wrongly or whatever, he asked for a 2-year extension to implement a drug court, and it's never happened. Folks, I want to see a drug court, a diversion court put here, because we need it. We need to keep people out of the criminal justice system. We have the funding for it. We can use some of this forfeiture money from SAFE to fund these programs. The money's there. Don't kid yourselves. You can also investigate this, and we can get funding through the Affordable Care Act. And again, the money from the forfeiture account would more than pay for this 10 times over. The resources are there. Just the forfeiture money alone could hire a full-time coordinator. The adult redeploy program is funded by the state of Illinois, and we all know that's in a budget impasse right now. The money's not coming in, so therefore there's no referrals being made to the adult redeploy program. We need to have money for this. We need to have somebody that cares about this and that wants to get this done. And somebody that needs to do that needs to work with the judiciary, because of course you need the approval of the judiciary, which I intend to work closely with Judge Ryan in getting something done and getting this drug court, diversion court, mental health court, whatever you call it. It needs to get done, and it needs to get done now. And I'm the person that can make that happen, because I have the drive, I have the connections, and I have the support of the community. And I have participated in drug walks, not for publicity. I don't get my campaign photos taken giving money to these programs. I donate this money out of my own pocket. I don't use drug fund money. I don't use forfeiture money. If I donate, it comes from me, Karen Donnelly.
If Mr. Towne is donating that $5,000, that's great, but where's that money coming from? It's probably not coming from him personally, probably from the drug forfeiture funds. I'm the person that can do the sobriety courts, drug courts, whatever you want to call them. They should include mental health too. From day one, I can hit the ground running because I've been part of a sobriety court, and we didn't do it with a lot of money. I don't know why everybody thinks it needs a lot of money. You need the cooperation of a lot of people. I know Chris Ryan. He signed one of my letters to get me into law school. We can do this. Yeah, you need the approval of the judiciary, but you also need to be willing to do it as a state's attorney. You can have your own type of diversion if you want for first-time offenders. You want to talk about the money? There's over $500,000 that went into Spring Valley City Bank. There's plenty of money to get this all done. Did it all come back into LaSalle County? There needs to be a huge accounting as to where all that money went, even if the Supreme Court says it was okay, but I don't think they will. So there's a lot more coming down the road on that, folks. Thank you.
My question is about civil forfeiture. Now, that's a term a lot of people don't know what it is unless they have either had some kind of an encounter with it, or they've gotten a reason to be against it. And civil forfeiture, for the audience's benefit, this is the process through which a drug dealer's property is taken so that it cannot continue to be used in drug dealing. There have been growing numbers of complaints from some sectors that it's being abused in some places. So the question is civil forfeiture abuse a potential problem here or a real problem here? Taking a few things, the few possessions somebody might have when they are actually innocent of a drug crime, and maybe it was a boyfriend who left a joint in a girlfriend's car or something like that. So the question is civil forfeiture a potential or real problem here? And Mrs. Roliardi, go ahead.
Thank you. I would hope it's not a problem here, but I've heard that rumored. I'd certainly want to look at all the assets that were forfeited over the years and see if there was a criminal case involved. I understand there hasn't been. There should be a criminal case involved, but it's very easy to make a plea agreement that, hey, if we just take your car or take the money, I won't charge you with the felony. That's a heck of a deal, isn't it? But, you know, is it legal? Yes, it's legal. So if we don't like it being legal, we have to lobby the legislature. But right now, I'm not saying they're doing anything improper. It's just that there's a real tendency to go overboard. And you need the checks and balances of the state's attorney not being the police unit that's doing these forfeitures, so that at least someone's overlooking to make sure, you know, that it wasn't done improperly, or you're just stopping someone because you've got an out-of-state license plate and it's the time of year where they could be moving, you know, drugs. Well, we need a lot more than that before you start taking people's assets. It's ripe for abuse, and we need to take a very hard look at it. And it's the state's attorney that's supposed to be the one that really says, wait a minute, to the police officers if they're just stopping for somebody. If it's his own police unit, there's where you've got a whole conflict of interest.
Brian Towne, go ahead.
You know, one of the great things about our country is that my life is an open book. As state's attorney, anybody can walk up to my office, submit a FOIA request, and ask for every document in my office. Mrs. Donnelly's done it. Her partner, George Mueller's done it. Mrs. Roliardi's done it. So the reporters here tonight have done it. I'm okay with that. I'm proud of the fact that the scumbag drug dealers that are poisoning our youth have their toys taken away. Most of my career has been dedicated to narcotics prosecution. And one of the things that I've realized over time is that drug dealers come and go. They use people, they crumple them up, and they throw them away. Some of the people we see come across the Interstate 80 are dying of cancer and want to provide for their family and figure if they can make 10 grand to go across the interstate with a load of dope, that maybe it'll help their family. Those aren't the people that should get life sentences. They need to be prosecuted, they need to be punished. But the way that we get to drug dealers is through their toys and through their money. And I, for the life of me, can't figure out why everybody seems to have a problem with taking money away from drug dealers and putting it into our communities, helping groups like Dusty Roads, helping groups like Buddy's Purpose, so that the drug dealers' own money is being used against them to help take their customers away. I don't understand why that's such a bad thing. I have complete accountability for my office, my funds. Anybody who wants to see them can. And you'll see that we spend money on law enforcement equipment, on training, on awareness, all the things that make our community safer and a better place to live. Thank you.
And Karen Donnelly.
Thank you, Rick. I don't have a problem taking money away from drug dealers, none whatsoever. What I do have a problem with is Mr. Towne getting a car from the drug forfeiture money, with anybody else in his office getting a car from the drug forfeiture money. That money can certainly be put to better use. Like I said, it can go to these drug courts. It can fund a whole lot. Mr. Towne talks about me and my partner requesting information from FOIA requests. Well, I had to sue Mr. Towne because they weren't complying with the FOIA request. We have an instance right now where I have asked for more documents, and on January 29th, I was told in 5 days I'd get the documents. Still don't have them. I've been contacted by a reporter from the Chicago Daily Law Bulletin that's running a story soon with regard to the expenditures and donations, campaign donations in disguise. I'm sorry, but I'm going to call it what it is. Mr. Towne says he's an open book. Then let's hear about where this money's being spent and how it's being spent, because I have researched over and over, spent countless hours looking at these records, looking at what has gone to Spring Valley. And my bookkeeping background has come in handy on this, and I have learned where this money's going, how it's going out, and I think the taxpayers need to know. I will drive my own car. I will fuel my own car. I don't ask for money. I will not take teaching jobs outside of LaSalle County State's Attorney's Office. I will be a presence in that office daily. As far as civil forfeitures, there's been a time when there's been lawsuits filed over some of these stops. Federal lawsuit where we had to pay to settle it because they pulled somebody over, no drugs were found, and there was a lawsuit filed against the SAFE investigator and the SAFE team in federal court. Well, guess who has to defend that? LaSalle County. Guess who has to pay for that? LaSalle County taxpayers. And I know we can do better, and I want to do better for you.
Thank you. Now we'll go on to the closing statements, and we're going to start right back with you, Karen, please.
Thank you, Mr. Stout. Like I said, this is not an easy job. Back the weekend before 4th of July, my sisters and I took my mother to visit her brother. She was concerned about me running for state's attorney because of the negativity and everything that's involved in this. This isn't easy. Mr. Towne is my friend. He gave me the wonderful opportunity to work there for 2 years. But during that time, as I mentioned, I've seen things that needed to be changed. LaSalle County deserves better. I think I can provide that. I have been dedicated to LaSalle County. I live here, I've worked here, I've paid taxes here, I own a home here, I've put my children through school here. I remain focused and dedicated to this county. There were other job offers I could have taken. My husband works outside of this area, but I remain focused and committed to the people of LaSalle County. My experience, maybe that will come up. My first year in practice, I handled 115 cases. Ms. Roliardi, since 1994, has handled 55. You want to talk about experience? Let's go. Again, I can do this job. I remain focused, committed to you, the people of LaSalle County, and I want your vote. Thank you.
Brian?
You know, I'm a little confused by some of Mrs. Donnelly's comments. She doesn't want me to have SAFE, but then she wants me to use the SAFE money for drug court. She doesn't want certain things, but then she wants other things. You know, as we all probably can agree, this isn't the easiest job in the world. But when I was a sophomore in high school, I wanted to be your LaSalle County State's Attorney. I called the State's Attorney at the time and said, what can I do to be State's Attorney someday? He was nice about it. He didn't laugh at me or hang up the phone. He said, finish high school, finish college, go to law school. But I have never strayed from wanting to serve you. And I haven't strayed from serving you. For 24 years, I have been dedicated tirelessly to putting bad guys and bad girls in jail where they belong, to keep you safe. I want to keep doing that. I want to get out there. I want to arrest people. I want to put them behind bars and do what's best for all of you. I don't want to use taxpayer money when I can use drug dealer money. I want to make sure that our police departments are safe, that they have vests, that they have ammunition, that they have the equipment and the technology that they need. And one of the things I'm most proud of, by the way, is the fact that over the years that I have been your state's attorney, I have assembled one of the greatest staffs in the world. They are amazing. They're a lot like me. They're dedicated to making you safe. They've stayed with me for most of them over a decade. They are experienced, and we work together to do what needs to be done for LaSalle County. I've always enjoyed doing what I can for you, and I've asked to continue to serve as your state's attorney for the next 4 years. Thank you very much.
Betty, please.
Thank you. In my 24 years as an attorney, I've handled thousands of cases, so I'm not sure where Ms. Donnelly comes up with those figures, but interesting. It's finally time that I bring my experience and my knowledge home to LaSalle County. We do live in Mendota now. I always did intend to return, and I'm proud to be running for state's attorney, a goal that I've had in most of my adult life. A friend of mine once described me as a very nice person, but not a weak person. Anybody that thinks that about me would be very mistaken. I am a tough prosecutor, but very fair. I am not weak on drug enforcement, don't think that for a moment, but I want to arrest the people legally and not create liability for LaSalle County, because I fear that is what has happened. And where that's going to happen, it's going to stagger us all when the Supreme Court decides. We do want to take drugs off the street, and that money should be used for drug enforcement purposes and for drug treatment purposes. That's what the statute says now. Nowhere does it say, form your own police unit, Madam State's Attorney. No. If Bryantown is giving money now finally to Buddy's Purpose or wherever, that's the first time he's giving money for some kind of treatment purposes. I looked at all of those disbursements for the State's Attorney's Forfeiture Fund. I saw nothing for drug treatment. I saw things for the St. B. Boosters Club, again in Bureau County. I saw all kinds of things for Spring Valley. Yes, it's nice to buy the Sheriff's Department equipment and spread the love around to other police departments. That's good, but there's a lot of stuff in there that only personally served Mr. Towne. And all those photo ops in the paper made me shake my head every time. Like, that's not your personal money. That's money that belongs to LaSalle County, not Bureau County. Thank you very much. I appreciate your support on March 15th. Thank you.